So today we have a 1024 UVMVP. I bought this used and I have no experience with these at all, but what I was able to do was successfully replace the cable kit because the cable and the print head needed to be replaced according to the previous owner, which he was correct. However, in my doing so, this right here I messed up and did not install it correctly. It should be on the opposite side, and unfortunately the only way to get it there is to disassemble everything. So since I've done this once before, I thought I would just go ahead and document it for anybody else that might find this beneficial as far as taking this apart. So the first thing I like to do is just take some towels. The instructions talk about using some cardboard, but I'll just take some towels and just lay them there just to protect the sticky mat. But something else I'm going to do just as an added precaution, I have a way of dropping parts, little screws that more than likely will wind up down in here. So I'm just going to put just a rag right there in case if I do drop some, which I will, that they won't get lost in the pit of eternity. Okay, so the first step I'm going to do is I'm going to take these and open these up so we can move the wires out of the way, or the ink tubes out of the way. So you just kind of just push in, and you push in and you kind of push down at the same time, and they just pop right open. But you just want to kind of be careful, obviously you don't damage the tubes. Yeah, like so. So you just take these and just pop these out. This one we won't worry about because it's actually connected to the tank. Okay, so next thing we're going to do is just slide this this little track off of here, and we'll just set this aside. So kind of a good habit I like to get into is as I take things off, just have a work area just to lay them down. So as I take parts off, I'll start here and just kind of work all the way to the left, just to try to keep it somewhat organized. So the next step we're going to do is take these wires out of here and just kind of gently pull these out, because we're eventually going to be removing the tank. So you just got to kind of finagle these out a little bit. Nice and easy. There we go. Okay. So then what you want to do is you'll start disconnecting these, and I'll just kind of, I'm not sure if the wire colors are the same for each machine, but what I'll do is I'll just document this for myself as I take these apart. So this is the yellow ink tank, and it's connected to the two green and yellow. Next we have the magenta, and this magenta is connected to, looks like two red and two green. So you just squeeze that connector. The next one is cyan, and it's connected to two green and two blue, dark blue. That's the magenta. The next color, oddly enough, is the clear, not the black. And the clear is connected to, looks like two green and two gray. Then we come to the black. The black is connected to two green and two black. And then finally we have the white. This is connected to two white and two green. And we'll just connect that like so. And then we have our the pump. This is a circulation pump for the white ink, and that is connected to just a red and a black. So we'll disconnect that. Okay, so now that we've done that, the next step is to take this whole ink tank assembly off. And it helps if you have two people. I mean, you can do it with one person, but it helps if you have an extra set of hands. So we have our 3 screws right here, and then just pan it around. Then we have 3 screws right there. I'm not sure of the sizes for the Torx, I just kind of hunt through my tools till I find the one I need, but at least you know where those are at. Okay, so here's the tank lifted up. Again, it helps if you have an extra person on the other side. You just kind of be mindful of your tubing as you lift it up and move it over. But this is the what it looks like when it's taken off. Okay, so now the next step is to take the back plate off, and according to the instructions, you got 3 here. These are T15 Torx. So got one. I'll take this side one off. And then finally our third one. There we go. And if you notice underneath here, I don't know if my camera girl can see this or not, but when you lift this out, before you lift it out, you can see right here, this screw goes in this hole, not this hole, obviously, otherwise your screw holes at the top won't match up. So you just kind of gently take this off, and then you can see the 2 boards. Okay, the next step is we're going to remove this Resetar box. I'm going to unplug this cable, and then what we'll have are these 2 screws. This is a newer one. I replaced the board, the main board. So this is the new Resetar box, and I'll be taking off those 2 Allen heads. So we'll just take these 2 screws out. For the Resetar box. And we'll just kind of gently lift this out. And actually, well, if you notice, we'll have to disconnect these 2 cables here. We'll have to disconnect these 2 cables here. So let me go ahead and do that. Okay. All right. Next step is we got this one, and this one to take out. But before I do that, what we want to do is just kind of move these wires out of the way. Okay, so we'll just kind of gently take these out of the way. Might be a little difficult because there is kind of a thicker connector, but just take these and just gently set these off to the side, and the same way with this guy. So then we have access to our screws there. So just take this one out, and this one right here. Go. And then I'll take this one out. Okay, then we just take this one out, and the whole thing just lifts off like that. Probably you won't do, just be mindful of this little cable right here. I mean, it's actually okay because the way it sets, but just be mindful there's a cable right there. Okay, now the next thing we're going to take off is this little Wi-Fi board right here. And if you notice, it looks like 2 T15s right there, and then there is also a connector as well. So let's just go ahead and disconnect that connector. That's what this little guy looks like. And again, he goes right there. So we just kind of gently move these wires out of the way. Now with these T15s, all you got to do is loosen them. You don't have to take them out all the way. Like so. And then this whole piece will just kind of slide right out. There we go. There's our little Wi-Fi board. It's not active, but according to the tech, you still want to keep it. It is part of the. You want to keep it plugged in. Another thing too, when we put this back, you just want to be careful. I didn't push it in all the way. I just didn't want to crimp these wires, press on these wires too much, or these cables more than necessary. Okay, so we finished this step right here. Now what's interesting is we have this machine. I have this machine right here. So I've got to take these three mounting bolts out for the UV light, but if you notice, my machine's a little bit different than shown in the picture. I can't really access these without taking this off. So what we just have a couple right here, and then we've got a couple of them right there. So I'll take those off, so that way I can take these off. Okay, so we'll take these two off right here, like so. Now the first time I did this, when I took them both off, this had a tendency to fall forward, so try not to let that happen next time. And for anybody who might be doing this for the first time. So I'll take these two off, and you can kind of see it has a tendency to want to move forward. Okay, then we'll take these two off, like so. Whoa. Okay, so then just kind of gently, how did I do that last time? I think we just kind of gently just set it down right here. Okay, I did have to move the ink tank forward a little bit, but that should be okay right there. And again, just keeping an eye on your tubing, your ink tubes. Make sure they're not getting crimped or pinched or anything. Okay, now I'll have access to these through screws. Something else the instructions don't show is I'll have to take off this lanyard right here in order to set this aside and ultimately get access to the carriage. Okay, so what I'm going to do first, I'm just going to take this lanyard off and just pop this guy off here. You know what I'll do? I'll just put it right back in here. There we go. And that way we have access to this. So now the next step we're going to do, let's go ahead and take these three screws off. Okay, so I'm just going to back up for a second. Obviously I don't want to take apart anything that doesn't need to be taken apart or removed. I had removed this according to the instructions. I had to remove this and remove the UV light, but really in reality, if you notice, the only thing I had to disconnect was the lanyard, which was connected here. I mean, everything else I can get full access to the carriage. Okay, next up I'm going to do, which I could have done earlier, is I'm going to take out the dampers. First step is to take this cover off with these two screws, and then you have this bracket right here, and then the dampers we can take out. Okay, so we'll take these two guys out. Start with this one. And we'll take this one out. And the next step, we'll take these guys out. The bracket that helps keep the tubes, the ink tubes, stabilized. Got 4. And these are, just for reference, they're T10s. Go. And then these two. those guys out, like so. And if you just notice the orientation of this, the bracket, this part right here, actually goes in front of here, this holder, so we'll just take this out. So then we've got full access to be able to take our dampers out. So you do want to be careful. I mean, you want to, if you can, try to pull them out by the brass fittings and not pull on the hoses. So you just kind of pop them all out, and then you can just kind of take and set them aside. What I might do, yeah, those should be okay right there. Okay. Okay, so the next step I did is I took out this screw here and this one right here. So that actually allows me to kind of move this, gently move this out of the way. So then I can have access, because I'm going to have to take this board, take these two screws out, and there's a really small one over here. So that way I'll be able to lift this up and then be able to remove the carriage, get access to the carriage to be able to remove it. But I know the next other steps I have is to take off the encoder strip and the belt and the shaft. Okay, so the next step is we're going to take the encoder strip off. So you just want to just gently pull it and just take it off the hook like so. So what you want to do is use a paper clip. I've got a little picker tool, and just put it behind the encoder strip, and where you can pull the spring forward, and you just want to be able to just try to get it out of the hole there like so. Okay, so then once you've done that, be careful of the spring. You'll have to take the encoder strip, you'll want to pull it out from behind the carriage, and pardon my fingers here, but so what you ultimately want to do, you want to be able to rotate it this way. Here, I'll just do it again so you can kind of see. You'll have to rotate it so you can see it'll pop out like so. Keep in mind too, if you notice, so you know the orientation of the encoder strip, you want to make sure and have this little black marking is to the left and upward of the printer. Okay, so the next step is we're going to remove the access belt. There's a tensioner right here, and if we come to our printer, you can see it. You can see the tensioner spring right here, and I'll use like a pair of needle nose pliers. Might even be able to use my fingers to pull that off. I'm trying to focus so you can actually see how it's hooked. And it might come off. The first time I did this, it did come off. So there is, get my picker tool and point to it if I can get it to focus. Yeah, right here, there's this little ear that you can see the hook that it hooks onto. So if the spring does come off, don't fret. I mean, it is a little tight back there, but if the spring does come off, you can put it back. So we'll take the spring off. Okay, so I did get the tensioner, the spring. Let's see if I can get in there. You can kind of see. Oh, that's a little too close. Anyway, you can see where I've taken it off. And this piece originally went inside this notch right here, and then that notch right there. So the pulley is completely loose. You can kind of see as I take it out, it's completely off. And then it's just a matter of going down here and just taking it off. Take it off that pulley right there. I hope this is helping somewhat. Okay, so now that I've done that, the next step is we're going to take this off right here. This is the UV light cable snake platform, just held in by these two screws I mentioned earlier, right here and right here. Yeah, so just wanted to note one thing. This has a ground wire attached to it, so just be mindful of that when you take that one out. Okay, so the next step after I've taken this one off is we'll take off those two right there and then be able to lift this whole piece off in order to get access to the carriage. So take this out, this one out, and just be mindful these do have little washers. Take this one out. We'll just kind of gently set that aside. So now we can actually take this whole piece off. Nice and easy. And just be careful of this little guy right here. Okay, so now the next thing we're going to do, we just took this piece off. Now we're going to take off the shaft. And to do that, we do want to line up, and you can kind of see it in here. It's a nice picture. You want to make sure and line up these two markings according to the directions. Not sure if you can see this or not. I actually put some markings on there, but I do have those two. They're lined up. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take this little clip off. Again, I'm just using a poker little pick tool. There we go. All right, and then the next thing you want to do is we're going to take this spring off. It's like a tensioner spring. You just want to be mindful of its orientation. I think the manual mentions it as well. So you just kind of pull that off like so, and probably getting my fingers in the way. But you just take it out just like that, and you can kind of see it. It actually rests right on the right onto the shaft. But keep in mind, so this is the longer part. This is the shorter part. The shorter part is going to be at the top. The longer part is at the bottom. And then the next thing we can do is we can take off the gear on that side. In order to then we'll go and do the same thing on the other side. Okay, so on this side there's no gears or anything to line up, so just mainly just going to pop this little clip off right there, and we'll do the same thing with this spring. You just kind of push it down and kind of work it out like so. And keep in mind again the orientation. This top part was rests right under there, and then this piece right here goes here. We'll take this, it rested right here. I think it's like a little groove in the shaft. I think it rests in. So we got this side off now, and then we're going to pull the shaft out. Okay, one thing I did forget is we do have this piece right here, and there's a little plastic clip you want to be careful not to lose. It's kind of like a little retainer clip. So this kind of pops out like so. Okay, and keep in mind that with the orientation again of this, what you have is this little piece right here that's used. It's like part of the encoder strip. Just make sure that the clip is to the right of that, and that this piece is closest to the shaft. This little plastic clip is closest to the this part of the shaft. Okay. And then this will probably, we can probably just take this out all together. There we go. And just make sure you don't lose your springs. So we'll just kind of set these aside. We took this little plastic clip out. We took this out. Now what we're going to do, when we take the shaft out, I'm going to take it out on this end as shown in the instructions. You just want to be mindful of these two washers, and also the orientation of this one, making sure the curved part is facing away from the shaft when you put it back in. So let's go ahead and do that. So if I can just kind of finagle this, move this over a little bit. that little washer came out. So I'm going to grab that while I can. I'm also going to just go ahead and take this washer out as well that we saw in the manual, so you can kind of see the way it's curved. So I'll set that aside, and then I'll just pull the, just gently pull the shaft out like so, and just kind of be mindful of the carriage as you do so. There we go. All right, so now we can take the whole shaft out, and I do know you want to be super careful with this. Just put it somewhere, maybe somewhere soft, or somewhere it's not going to roll away. Okay, so here I've lifted the carriage out. One thing to be mindful of too, you've got this little piece. There is like a notch right here, which I guess stands to reason it would go where that little piece is at right there. So as far as the orientation. So this is the print head. What we're going to do now is we're going to take this this belt off. There's like a little clip. You just kind of, I think you just kind of rotate it down, this little clip. Maybe not. Oh, there we go. So you just rotate it that way, and if you notice the way it's shaped, how it just fits in there and rotates and locks into place. So we'll take this off, and then that allows us to slide the whole belt off. So if you're ever going to replace the belt, this is how you do it. So I'm just going to set that down right there. So now what we're going to do is I'm going to take this, pop this cover off right here to get access to the cable. Okay, so the way you take this cover off is you have a tab here and a tab here and a tab down there. These two tabs actually come in right there, so you just got to take a screwdriver and something to push them down and pop those out, and then push this up, and then the whole thing pops off. Okay, so just a note to myself and anybody, if I don't know if this will make sense or not, but on the carriage, I took the cover off. As you can see, I took that cover off, and what I had to do was that cable I actually had to route behind that slot, and then here, and then I had to plug it in after I took the cover off. Okay, so in my opinion, probably one of the most difficult parts, for me at least, is trying to get this tensioner spring back in its place, because when you start to pull it, I use a pair of needle nose pliers, which probably isn't the correct tool. When you pull it, it has a tendency to pop out of its place. So what I figured out to do, and I'm just documenting this for myself, is I found if I stick my finger right there, and then I grab the pliers and I'm able to keep this pushed in, then I can grab this hook with the needle nose pliers, and then it pops right in place. The process of this, you definitely want to make sure, maybe it wouldn't hurt to go back and double check, because of all the cables in the way, just double check your cables, make sure nothing popped out, none of the connectors popped out. It'd be a shame to put it all back together and then come to find out something got disconnected. So just go back and double check everything.